Welcome back to the Wine Crush. I am Laura Lawson, and right now I had the pleasure of welcoming truly a legend in the wine business. We have the great man who has worked at Christian Moex. He has worked with Dominus, and he has worked at Caymus. Yes, he has done a little bit of everything, but Chris Phelps, the winemaker for Swanson, is now working at being part of the Crush today. Chris, welcome to the Wine Crush.
Hey, Laura. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a delight. Anyone with your pedigree belongs on the Crush. Maybe you can raise the whole...
I think we share some of our pedigree.
Oh, we do now.
Well, my parents were engineers and teachers, so...
Oh, it's so nice to meet someone else that has sense. It does really help, but definitely, anything you can do to raise the whole IQ around this place, it does help.
Absolutely.
Well, Chris, tell us a little bit about what's going on with Swanson Vineyards. Swanson, I think, is kind of like the dark horse. A lot of people love the area, love the wine, but don't know much about Swanson.
Well, we're trying to change that. We're a small winery that's family-owned, which is, as you probably know, a rarer and rarer thing, even in Napa Valley.
A daily rarer thing, apparently.
Yeah, but, these corporations are snapping up a lot of things. But the winery is on a postage stamp little vineyard here in Rutherford, right in the geographic heart of Napa Valley, and our vineyards are all in Oakville. So most of the wine we make is from Oakville. We specialize in 3 wines, our white wine being Pinot Grigio, and then our biggest production red wine is Merlot, and just behind that is Cabernet, which is a growing segment for us.
And, of course, being in the area that you are, you have some crappy neighbors like Opus One, Silver Oak, Groth, Plump, Jack Rudge, those second label kind of people.
We suffer along.
Yes, you do. Well, tell us how you wound up at Swanson, because looking at your background, working from Christian Moex, obviously you've worked at Dominus, then, of course, you worked at Caymus. How did you wind up at Swanson, a family-owned vineyard?
Well, it's all about opportunity. And Chuck Wagner, the owner of Caymus, his 2 sons were coming into the business, and it was, it's as a winemaker, you like to be able to retain your artistic license, and just an opportunity came up practically across the street here at Swanson that was irresistible because their long-term winemaker Marco was leaving, and I was able to jump in and take something that had all of the pieces needed to take it to another level. It seemed pretty apparent, and I haven't been disappointed. I've been here 6.5 years already, and just getting back to Merlot in itself was a huge thing for me, because that's what I cut my teeth on going to school in Bordeaux in the early 1980s, and I've been doing Cabernet for eons, and to get back to Merlot, which is a winemaker's wine. I mean, it's such an amazing wine to work with. Was something I really gravitated towards.
It's a wine with a lot of great personalities. I think people tend to assume that Pinot Noir is the chameleon, but truly Merlot can be anything you want it to be in the right hands.
Absolutely. If it's grown in the right place and treated the right way, I mean, I think it's one of the great wines of the world. And I guess I'm kind of, it's not an objective comment, because I was able to live at Chateau Petrus in Pomerol when I worked for Moex.
You poor baby.
Yeah. I've had the occasional bottle, and I know how truly good Merlot can be. You can pronounce it. And what's not to like about the soft, luxurious tannins in a good Merlot? Plus, the price is generally quite a bit more reasonable than Cabernet.
See, I think it's fascinating. I've got to ask you this question. I'm going to put you on the spot. So how much do you hate the movie Sideways?
Well, like a lot of Merlot producers, when I was sitting in that movie, I was in a small theater in Sonoma, California, and surrounded by Pinot Noir producers, which became obvious as the movie progressed. But I was not expecting that line. There's one line in a movie. I mean, it just shows how impressionable we are as a society, that one short line in a movie by some loser guy has this impact. But in a way, and I could go on for an hour, which I know we don't have time, but Merlot kind of set itself up, became its own worst enemy, because it does so well in such a variety of situations in terms of growing, from California Central Valley up into the foothills on up to the peaks around Napa Valley like Howell Mountain, Spring Mountain, Atlas Peak. That it's always got good acidity and good color, but there's an ocean of questionable Merlot out there, okay?
I think you're being gracious by saying questionable. There's some really rock gut out there.
But it became synonymous, and it was perfectly positioned when the Mediterranean diet came out, the French paradox. Even Robert Parker's mother was asking, which red wine she should drink every day. And it became synonymous with, bartender, give me a glass of red wine. Merlot, yeah, whatever. So it sort of hurt itself in a way. And it took off exponentially and was set up for failure. And I think the same could be said of Pinot today.
I think we're going to see that soon, and I wouldn't be surprised to see another movie icon coming out and saying something against Pinot Noir. I think what I love most, though, and this is what people need to remember, Americans especially, they talk dry, but they drink sweet. And people say, oh, I want this big, tannic, amazing red wine, and you give it to them, and they look at you like you've given them a piece of chalk to suck on. And they don't realize that what they're really looking for is something approachable and drinkable, and I cannot think of a better Napa Valley Merlot than Swanson.
Well, thank you. But I think you've dialed in on something right there, and I think I read a little bit about Wine Crush. I know, a little bit about what you think about scores. And the reason a lot of us, even winemakers, gravitate towards, I must like this because it got a 98. But it's those big, dry, tannic, overripe wines that attract the critics, but they're not the ones generally we want to sit down at the table and drink with our dinner.
The critics may love them, but the public doesn't want to drink them, and people are buying them to lay down in their cellars so they can take their friends by and say, look what I have.
Yeah. I mean, we all fall into that same trap, but there's too much good stuff out there at reasonable prices, and we don't need to do that.
No, we absolutely do not. What we do need to do is get our listeners to stop by Swanson, something that fascinates me. Tell us that y'all have a very unique hospitality system.
Yeah, I think it was really the first of its kind. It's been a bit replicated now as the word got out, but it's called a salon, modeled after the Paris salon of the early 20th century, where discussions, were around a table, and people, it was not so much a presentation by someone, some luminary in whatever arena, but a discussion about a passionate discussion about a certain topic. That's what happens at our salon table, and 8 to 10 people sit around there for an hour and a half, with some very, very good people we have to host these things. And it's unlike any tasting. When there's some food and wine pairings throughout, but it's a very, very good introduction, not just to Swanson, but to Napa Valley.
How do you ever get people to go home?
Sometimes that's a problem.
I would imagine it would be.
Could I have just a little more caviar with that Pinot Grigio?
Forget the caviar. Give me the chocolate.
Well, we do have some chocolate, too.
Yes, you do. I have had the pleasure of some of your chocolate in the past.
Well, have you been here yourself?
I have. It's been a while, but next time I come out, I promise I'm going to sneak out and come visit again. If nothing else, I read about the new chocolate you're doing, and I have to sample that.
Okay, we'd love to see you.
Well, question for you while we have time. The theme of today's show, of course, we're talking about bottles as a whole. And, of course, you of all people, we could talk for an hour about having worked at Petrus and how you feel about that. Mm-hmm. But in looking at bottles, y'all do a very unique take on bottle. Tell me about the Swanson bottle and your label.
Well, you're talking more about the overall package?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I assume you're referring more to the label than the bottle.
You have a heavier bottle and a beautiful label, and you put it all together, and they're almost mixed together, so you look at it and it stands out on the shelf. Why is that something you picked?
Well, you've really touched on the one thing that I don't have much to do with.
Well, Chris, I had to try. You seem like an expert on everything.
Well, thank you. Well, winemakers love to think they are, but it's not really true.
Oh, don't admit that. I've been telling my listeners all the time that y'all know everything.
We're not actually on the air, are we?
No, of course not.
But Alexis Swanson, Swanson's oldest daughter, is the only daughter that's involved in the day-to-day operations at the winery, and her title is creative director.
Well, we'll have to beat her up and get her on the show. But right now, Chris, I'm going to have to say goodbye to you, but I'm going to have you back on, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the whole concepts of what we think about scores. But thank you for being part of the show today and talking about Swanson, and I promise I'm going to get your 2 cents worth back here on The Crush.
Hey, thank you, Laura. Take care.